Okay. Now on to the portion of the meeting that most of you are here for, which is an update on the progress of the Purple Line. I'm thrilled that we have Greg Sanders here to provide the update. Certainly for this audience, Greg needs no introduction. For more than 3 decades, what is now the idea of the Purple Line and the enormous effort it's taken to see it to this point in the process toward completion has been a Sanders family gift to Montgomery County. As Greg says in his Purple Line bio, he grew up along with the Purple Line, created Lego models of the Georgetown branch, helped clean the right-of-way, distributed literature for supportive candidates, and the list goes on. Greg has been a board member of Purple Line now since 2010, and I'm looking forward to hearing about the progress that's been made and the steps that remain before we can all take our first ride on the Purple Line. So with that, I'll hand the floor over to Greg.
Thank you, Paul. All right, so I don't have any dramatic revelations that have not been in the news, but I'm going to try to summarize a variety of what's happened in the last year. And it's been quite a busy one, so it can be easy to lose track of various issues. I'll be watching the chat as we go, and we can stop and sort of discuss some key points. But on the whole, I'm going to start with the overview and then go through what is our top 10 of Purple Line stories for this past year. And I'll briefly plug Purple Line Now. If you would like to hear some of these stories as they come along, we put out a bi-weekly newsletter. We try to get some of the key roundup issues. And feel free to sign up. And so it's now been 17 years, so a good chunk of the time that the Purple Line has been working its way through the system. So quick reminder, why are we building the Purple Line? So the estimate is about 70,000 daily riders as it gets to full capacity, boosting 2.2 billion in annual income for the region, 13 billion property value, getting the time between Bethesda and Silver Spring down to under 10 minutes, jobs doing construction, and ultimately 17,000 cars up a congested road, and it completes the Capitol Crescent Trail, connecting all the way between Bethesda and Silver Spring. So it also, you may have seen a Washington Post story a while back on the sort of tale of 2 counties. This also ties to a variety of the ongoing, work on gentrification and other concerns. But I don't know, I guess in the map, in the chat, what this map covers. So not seeing any guesses now, so I'll just go ahead and proceed.
I was gonna say, I thought it was the DMV, but I don't see Virginia. So this is just.
Yeah, that is DC and the Purple Line corridor.
Montgomery.
So from Bethesda to New Carrollton. And we have a correct guess. Yes. So congratulations, Barbara and Jerry. Yeah, so this gets to some of the ways that our region has traditionally been segregated. Jerry Chisholm has written about theories of integration and a variety of the housing things. One of the things that Purple Line does by bringing that east-west connection is taking a variety of different sorts of neighborhoods that our region has and bringing them together and giving access to underserved communities and jobs. The other hand is that there's the potential for disruption and displacement as it goes. And so there are a variety of organizations, ACT has done some work here, Purple Line Corridor Coalition, and many elected officials that are trying to work to mitigate those effects and make sure the benefits are widely shared. And again, why are we doing this? Well, commutes in the region are pretty terrible. They're different under present conditions, but I think a good amount of that will probably be bad again, hopefully, knock on wood, as we're moving more. The full effects of telecommuting and the like are going to be hard to tell for a while, But the estimate from MTA had been that Bethesda to Silver Spring during rush hour would be 40 minutes come 2030. And you look at the percentage for the commute time with more than 60 minutes, you can see why the Purple Line can make such a big difference, particularly in areas like Langley Park and Riverdale, where, apologies, there are bus access and terminals, but you might have to make 3 transfers to actually get to a job area if you are a house without a car. And you might have to spend a good amount of time on the road if you do have one. And so taking my own neighborhood, this is how the Purple Line will expand access for Long Branch. So the dark purple are places where the Long Branch neighborhood can get in 30 minutes before and after Purple Line. Middle purple is the 45 minutes, and then the larger circle is 60 minutes. So it's a vast expansion. Yeah, and thus, starting a series of train pictures for our 7-year-old member, among others, who both are young at heart. Ultimately, the Purple Line is a jobs line and connects key economic corridors. Okay, so what's actually happened in 2021? MTA put together a pretty effective video of this, and I'll let that play with sound off so you don't get a weird echo effect. Apologies. So Plymouth Tunnel approach is again actually near Long Branch. The breakthrough was a few years back, but now by that giant, you can actually, they've taken down the major construction facility, and there are much more preparation for tunnel itself. Some of the enhancements involve things like planting the trees that are to make up for ones that were lost in construction. Campus Drive over by College Park, which is actually a place we can see tracks now, if that kind of thing excites you, and it excites me. The Glen Ridge Maintenance and Operations Maintenance Facility is where the train cars will be going for testing. A good number have been constructed and sent over to the United States, but are now being completed in Elmira. So as the facility gets up and running, they'll have test track there, and they can begin to get things fully operational. A lot of the full-on bridge construction was paused with the builder having departed. But in essence, what's happening in many of these is everything that can be done directly by the state of Maryland. So full-on bridges, no, but abutments and the like, yes. So where are we now? The short version is last year was the year of competition. This is the year where we should have the new builder coming online and begin to take over. I'm sorry, I'm auto advancing. Begin to take over a range of construction that is beyond the capability of just the state of Maryland on its own. Maryland had, over the couple of years of pause, taken on 150 subcontracts to keep implementation going, done a great deal of utility location work, and then worked with the concessionaire being in the lead to actually do the competition for a new one. So what's the next big step? What we'll actually be excitedly waiting for is the presentation of a contract of the Board of Public Works. So Board of Public Works is the governor, treasurer, in a total of 3 officials and the comptroller. And they ultimately will need to approve this to go forward. It being a major major contract update, and a variety of information on cost and schedule will be coming out as part of that. We'll get more details as it goes, but the full approval will be a lot of information about Public Works. So we're all kind of eagerly weighing that, but unfortunately, I don't have any inside information on exactly what will be said there. And the picture on this one is the Bethesda second entrance. So that will over be by Bethesda Row. We did get bad news. It's going to be a bit more expensive than expected. But ultimately, it's a rather essential connection because that will allow, one, just having a second exit at all will be quite useful. If you've been to Bethesda at all, you know there's a great deal that can be quite nice to be able to get to Bethesda Row exactly. It'll give direct access to the trail, in addition to being the Purple Line station. So there's a wide range of benefits. And this is one of the things that while Montgomery County is taking over has responsibility for it, you ultimately be the builder that is responsible for the implementation of this. And so we can see progress on that as the constructor comes back online. Okay, so what are our top 10 stories for the 2021? So we've had a good deal of changeover. Kevin Quinn had resigned to take on new responsibilities at Toronto. So head of MTA. And then just recently, we've had Greg Slater, Secretary of Transportation, depart. On the whole, particularly Secretary Slater's departure is a bit disappointing, as he was, even in disagreement, able to connect and communicate fairly well with a wide range of elected leaders and other advocates. So we appreciate his presence. I think that probably the amount of changeover, including also the changeover of the treasurer, is probably one of the reasons that the Board of Public Works pushes back, as there's a good number of people who need to be briefed up and come to understand the major decisions. That said, we don't expect this to actually cause any direct risk to the line. It's just a bit of disruption as you change over officials. There's been no concern of new officials being skeptics or wishing to slow things down directly. All right, so what happened over the course of the past year, we had the 3 builders that were shortlisted. So that was Halmar International, Meriden Transit Solutions, and Tudor Perini. So that was in the spring. And then we proceeded for competition. The competition itself took a bit longer than was initially estimated, but this was one of those cases where it was essentially allowing time to reduce risk. Of the 3 competitors were given ample time to review the current state of project, one they would be taking on in the midst of construction, and so they would obviously want a great deal of detail there. And ultimately, that process took a while, but was able to see through 2 of these competitors ultimately putting in the bid and then the final selection. So we've had some good news for small business during this process. Thanks to Meriden General Assembly, there was a $2 million construction grant program that will help for businesses that are having to deal with the extended period of construction. And Montgomery County was able to come on board with an additional $230,000. There's also been work by Meriden Purple Line itself with the business engagement team. And that seems to be an area where they're going to be continuing to emphasize, try to make connections. This is going to be important as once construction gets going more, the good news is things are moving faster. We'll get to the day where the line is there and those nearby can get the benefits of it. The bad news is that in some ways disruption can increase, just as construction has a variety of needs. So we also got more detail on the Capitol Crescent Trail plans. And courtesy of Ben Ross with his picture, I did not get his permission, so hopefully he doesn't mind. But it's a rather fun one of being cleared just recently. So it's a 2-stage construction for the Capitol Crescent Trail. There's a proposal to have it go under Wisconsin. That would be rather expensive. And you'd probably need additional funding sources. The good news is with federal resources and range of infrastructure bill and the like, there are opportunities to apply for those. And I think that's one area where we can and should be pushing. The way you can see the gray line, which is the lower line on the right graph, is where the surface trail will go through. It'll connect through Elm Street Park. The exact configuration of how Elm Street Park will change will depend some on whether or not ultimately the tunnel is going to be coming in. As with any construction project, if you know whether it's going to be in 2 phases, you can make choices up front that save you a little money rather than have to do it in 2 chunks. So if we can find out and be budgeted if it's going to be the underground portion, that's good news because it can make the Elm Street upgrades cheaper. But otherwise, there are still options available later. There's also going to be a bike parking garage. It's the little symbol under the Purple Line station there at the terminus under either plan. But there's also a wide variety of other sidewalk and safety issues we're going to be tracking. This was a memorial, done by ACT, thank you, for a gentleman that had died along the right of way. And there's been talk of bills for safety measures. I think Delegate Chakoudan has one up there that we're pushing for. Prince George's County is making a variety of efforts, and credit Vic Weisberg for continuing to push on that. But that's also one that I think is somewhat limited by funding. And these are all areas where hopefully some work from infrastructure bill might be able to further credit things. And I think the General Assembly push matters. So economic development around the corridor, things have not paused. This is the Crescent groundbreaking that happened this year. New Carrollton has had an economic development strategy. We've seen a variety of building in Silver Spring. So things are happening. Otherwise, the Board of Public Works approved more for consultants and with private activity bonds. So the consultants essentially were augmented staff for Maryland to manage construction. And so they're extended through the end of the construction period. And the private activity bond was choosing to buy out some of those that had funded initial financing. The idea here essentially was that Maryland was doing a bit of prepayment in order to have a few fewer cooks in the kitchen for the selection of a competitor. So construction has continued. You've seen the video that kind of covered a variety of things that are happening now. A lot of the work you had a chance to see in person has been the utility relocation. I have heard an explanation. Secretary Slater did a good job at the transportation road shows in Montgomery and Prince George, is going into some of these details. We've also heard our own means that essentially what's under some of our major roads, such as Wayne Avenue, was not necessarily fully understood at the time of initial construction. So as they've gone in, they found that a variety of what was, I see we actually have a question in the chat. Yes, time consuming, noisy. Okay, so the current estimate is there 66% complete construction. So construction of utility relocation specifically. So it started in 2017. So it's actually been, and the utility relocation has gone on for a good period, even with the disruptions. So it's been about 4 or 5 years of it. Some of it was restricted by permits that they now have on board. So that's been one of the delays. But as I was starting to say, my understanding is a good deal of a problem has been that we did not fully know what was underneath some of our roads. And as we've gone down, we found there's a variety of challenges. To give an anecdote from my own life, it might be a little representative. We recently had lost power as water had slept into our electrical bill. When an electrician came on board and came and checked it out, he pointed out that we actually had a variety of wires, but it wasn't clear where they were connected to exactly. And this was sort of a problem. This, I think, in some ways has been some utility relocation. As they've gone in, some things are more corroded. There are a variety of pipes and other things that were not where they were expected. And yes, it's been an enormous driver. Thank you, Ben. And so that has been where a lot of the effort is. That's going to be continuing, but we'll find, with a new builder online, we'll finally be able to begin to shift some to other forms of construction. I don't actually have any formal estimates on how long utility reconstruction continues, but I think probably we're still going to see a good amount of it over next year. So the best news for me, that was exciting, came out of the road shows, was additional rail cars have been acquired. So why this matters. The initial headways for Purple Line during rush hour were going to be 7.5 minutes. It can go as low as 5 minutes under the contract. There was an option to buy additional rail cars at a set rate, that had lapsed. But as part of a negotiation to bring on a new builder, there was an arrangement to buy some more upfront that will actually be able to move us lower than 7.5 minutes. I don't have a total number of what the new estimate is, but some of the progress there is quite good. All right, we see a question from Alan Schneider. So when's the estimated opening date? We don't have it. I'll get back to that. The outside estimate of what I've heard is 2026. I think that's kind of where the full limit is if everything goes out of range. Hopefully we'll be doing better than that, but that's where things stand. What percentage of work is completed? Total work, the video estimated at 10%, with a variety of about 95% of design done. In terms of the having a variety of the permits and the like, I think that that is actually much more in progress. And so a variety of the I's dotted and T's crossed, so a builder can proceed full steam ahead once we're on board. So when will one of the light rail vehicles be placed for public viewing? That I don't know, but the key prerequisite there is going to be the Glenridge operation and maintenance facility. So this year that got power. That's going to be where the test track is. And so that's over on the Prince George's side, closer to New Carrollton. And as that facility gets up and running and you start to have the test facility, we'll have the ability to run the track, trains back and forth, make sure that like the many miles of wiring that are being added in the United States work properly and the like. And I think once they're there, there's opportunities for showing. So have track been laid? I've only seen college, there's a bit more, if you look at my backdrop, that's a little closer to New Carrollton. So there's some beyond Glenridge, I forget, Etten Road, I think is the name. So we've seen some other areas with a bit of track, but it's relatively limited still. But as you saw in the video, a variety of ties are coming in. So I think we're going to be seeing more track as things start to move forward. But that's where we have it right now, College Park and Etten Road, or Allen Road. Okay, so I'll briefly plug our forum. We're going to have an upcoming forum this year. One thing that we try to do for forums is, as this review has covered, Maryland is in the lead, Maryland is the owner, but Montgomery County and Prince George's County have key roles, and getting all the various officials talking to one another and on the same page is vitally important, especially for the last mile safety connections and the like. It also is going to matter for disruption and displacement. We've covered some of the economic ones. Various officials from the counties have been working. There have been right now along the corridor 17,000 affordable housing units. And one of the key initiatives that we've heard some from local officials and PLCC has been trying to make sure that we have no net loss of affordable housing. There's additional construction, but that if anything is replaced, that we're making sure we're adding units to be able to make sure that those who are now along the corridor have a chance to enjoy its benefits, in addition to being room for new people to move in. Okay, and so the biggest thing was the new constructor being chosen. So that's Dragodas USA and OH USA. So a variety of experience. They've done some work, in Canada as well. There's, I think, work on some of the LA facilities. We're hoping that once they come on board, we'll certainly intend to invite them to a Purple Line forum to hopefully hear more from them. And we're going to have a variety of negotiation and other details being worked out as we get to the Board of Public Works. But that partnership is ultimately going to be responsible for building. And then the larger concessionaire is responsible for operation maintenance for 30 years thereafter. The hope of that design is that the incentives will be correct, that they have no real reason to do anything rush or on the cheap, because ultimately they're responsible for maintenance. I think the initial departure of floor shows very limits to a degree, but you can successfully transfer risks to a private sector. And so Maryland obviously has been trying to negotiate, take a very close look at that. And we'll see what happens with the Board of Public Works about how the handling of the full contract and risk of taking over a new builder from an old will be handled. But this has been an area where we had consistently heard from Secretary Slater that a lot of the emphasis was on making sure that the risk in the future was understood and that you don't have any pigs in the poke. And I think that is something we're going to be hearing a lot of once we get the Board of Public Work emphasis. All right. So again, kind of summary, so utility relocation, 66% done. Design work, the designers stayed on board when the constructor left. So that's a 95% done. And it's been an area where Purple Line President Ralph Bennett has long banged the table for a desire to actually get detailed schematics of what these stations would look like. We have some of the Ardent Transit projects. One particularly valuable thing that's available if you go to some of the CAT meetings or the Purple Line website is a breakdown of, for each train and station, for each station, where the platform will be, where the tracks will be, how it aligns with roads and the like. And so you can get some pretty good overview of what each station will look like from that. But the final design is something that we're still waiting for. And likewise, Purple Line President Ralph Bennett will repeatedly bang the drum for having signs of where each station will be, which I think, with 21 stations on the stop would have some real value. And then finally, the stormwater permits are particularly important because if you might recall, that was one of the 4 major issues that had been the dispute between the concessionaire and Maryland, or the builder and Maryland. And so the resolution there, other issues included, of course, the lawsuit, which caused almost a year of delay and 130 million in lost productivity, and also the CSX wall, which we haven't heard more about, so I think is probably largely out. Okay, and so that's kind of a broad overview of what we've done in the last year of developments. So that has happened. We've seen a lot of, we've got some more rail cars coming. The rail cars are actually, the initial says largely constructed, which is why it's possible to add more at a low risk. Okay, sorry, Laura Poston. I do not have a specific estimate there. It's at 66% complete. I think with the constructor on board, that should be able to progress at greater speed. We'll find out more at the next set of CAT meetings. However, the next set of CAT meetings will probably not be in the next few months. We'll probably have them in early spring or mid-spring. Okay, Jonathan Bernstein. The plan is to open the Silver Spring bike path once it's finished, even while railcars are being tested. We have not gotten an answer there. That was a plan from the prior constructor that had been on offer. I think that is a possibility, and that's something we're going to ask a new builder, but there are no promises there. Okay, the CSX wall. So that is, they go to the Purple Line map, as it goes from the Georgetown branch, which is the connection between most of Bethesda and Silver Spring. Most of the line was a historic freight line. Yes. Sorry. A historic freight line that had been used to run coal into Georgetown, hence Georgetown branch. Once that was retired, a variety of people, such as my father, Ross Capon in here, and a variety of other longstanding ACT advocates had pushed for the acquisition of the line between Bethesda and Silver Spring, which, as we all know, runs through Chevy Chase. That is not an expensive place to acquire real estate and such connections. And so That was the initial impetus of the line, and some 35 years ago. So that, if you actually doesn't quite run all the way to Silver Spring directly. It's the pure portion from the CSX line, which is if you, when you're riding the red line out from Silver Spring, that goes by the freight rail there. And so that portion is both freight and rail, and there'll be a portion with the purple line itself as well. The CSX wall was something, there had been a hope of a particular design that would have been a bit on the cheaper side, but would require the freight company CSX to approve. CSX did not approve. And as a result, there's going to be about an $80 million concrete wall that's going to separate the light rail from the freight area as an added level of protection. So that was something that was a dispute between Maryland and the concessionaire. With the design largely complete, that part should be done. And so that'll be part of the construction, but we'll probably hear a bit about that contributing possible add cost. 10% completed figure. That was something that caught my eye as well, because you are correct. The figure it's heard largely at the point of disruption is about 32%. I think the question of 10% is, ultimately a question of how you calculate these things. If you look at things like rail, the actual rail side, that is, as we had the discussion earlier, we're only seeing rails in a few areas. So we're seeing the rail under Campus Drive. We're seeing it a bit over by the operation facility. We're seeing over at Ellen Road in New Carrollton, but most of that construction is yet to be done. Some of the highest risk construction has already happened. So the Manchester tunnel, tunneling is always extremely hard, but not just a breakthrough, but we'll work on both ends and begin to, if you now go down Wayne Avenue, you can see the concrete facility for that particular station having been largely built up. So you've seen a variety of progress there. And so we've actually had some of the core critical path portions going, but no, the 10% estimate is lower than we previously heard. And I think that is going to be a question we're going to have to get a variety of detail on once we have the next set of CATs in terms of what exactly you count as construction progress. I think some of it has also been a matter of cost and risk and getting some of the key challenges done. Okay, next question. So when the building will be constructed over CSX tracks between Silver Spring, Red Line, and Transit Center? I don't know. I know that right now, in terms of immediate priority for bridges, there's been a lot of emphasis on the Talbot Avenue Bridge, where that community has been cut off for a while. There'll be getting Spring Street done, and a couple of the other areas where there are going to be large impacts on current, traffic and pedestrians might take a higher priority as things first come on board. I haven't heard any estimates there. So that said, I think the main delay in that in many other areas was that you needed the constructor to have that full capability and to put that in. So with the constructor coming back online, I think we can see progress there, maybe not sooner rather than later, but probably in the midterm. I think that we might see a couple other areas based on pressure from political leadership that might take priority over the Silver Spring Red Line and Transit Center. Okay, do we have more questions? All right, current supply chain. Oh yes, absolutely, 100%. We're going to be, that's in, we've heard clearly from Greg Slater, Secretary Slater on his speaking. Unfortunately, it's the cost of construction materials and a variety of specifics. And there's been specific areas on the Sleaford Road underpass that they'd hoped to have done by the end of the year, where supply chain issues have disrupted. And I think one thing to watch here will be the contracting approach. it's not uncommon to have construction comment contracts with economic price adjustments. So if you're making the deal now, you can kind of guess how long inflation will be an issue, how long supply chain will be an issue, and the constructor will charge you a risk premium for that. Or Meriden can choose to take some more of that risk and sort of bet on the downside that, you know, a year from now prices may be better, and choose to pay, you know, take on risk of what those prices are rather than leaving the constructor. So we'll see some effects of the supply chain difficulties, and we'll hear about that as the Board of Public Works comes in. And good question from Gary as well. So yes, the details regarding construction cost and schedule, I think they'll be probably a little bit in the air, but the large question of, you know, what the top line schedule is and what it's going to cost are fundamentals that I think you're going to have at least the outer edge on schedule and the estimate of cost there, because that's the kind of detail the Board of Public Works just needs to approve things. So the exact timing, I think end of February is in line with the estimates have been. We've kind of been eagerly, you know, refreshing the Board of Public Works pages for notes and find out which one will be presented at. And they'll, you know, our executive director, Christine Scott, and myself and others will be eagerly going through that information along with many people on this line. And, you know, we'll be looking at some of those details. As I was trying to say, probably some of it will be on a cost basis. So we won't know entirely what the cost will be because it'll depend some on inputs that, you know, if you know exactly what the inflation rate will be a year from now, you can be a very wealthy person and make some very good investments. But for the rest of us, you know, there's going to be some shots in the dark. But I think we'll have an idea of what the estimate is and what some variants are. And the larger limits on the contract should be established as part of the Board of Public Works, because that's what the governor, the comptroller, and the treasurer ultimately have to approve. All right, so when can the 7-year-old rail fan finally ride the Purple Line? So the outer bar estimate that I've seen, this is actually from not the winning constructor, but one of the other constructors that had put a presentation together, was 2026. So that's a pessimistic one, but I think if you want to be a conservative of where things might actually be, that's the number to start with. And I think the state and the constructor both have a strong incentive to move that forward if at all possible, because ultimately the Purple Line works on availability payments. So a variety of the payback for the larger concessionaire happen once the line is open. And obviously Meriden has a very strong interest in getting this open. That said, I think the governor's interest has been maybe a little bit more in managing costs at this point, because obviously it's not going to open during his term. So that headline figure the Board of Public Works will be hearing is perhaps his most immediate interest. That said, I think that, okay, so 2026, so that should be potentially 11 or 12. The Purple Line itself will be about 40 years old at that point. So hopefully we can get this done before its 40th birthday, not quite before my 40th birthday. But, you know, well before, you know, if your 7-year-old has an interest in maybe going to University of Maryland someday, and, you know, if they do, and for those future students, one thing that we have had announced in the last few years was that the 5 stations, I believe all 5 stations, Vic, correct me if I have a number there wrong, around the College Park area are going to be free for students to ride back and forth. So
that's correct, Greg. It's 5 stations 5 stations within the university, you know, greater complex. Three directly on the main campus, and then 2 on the eastern portion of US 1.
Okay, and a good question from Alan Schneider. I believe I've been out of my contracts for a while. I believe the cost was about 10 million a car. Note that these are the longest cars in the country right now, so they're modular. So rather, each train is one continuous corridor. So 10% of this actually results in 10% capacity increase, because both, you can stand in that intermediate area, and you can, if you're in a more crowded car, you can walk from one to another to get to a less crowded area. So the final Bose stations, and if you actually want to see, right now you can't see the full-on light rail cars as you go down Myra, but if you want to see a model, go to the Long Branch Library, which has one just around the corner. It may move at some point, but it's been there for a while, and it's just exciting to me every time I go in the building. And so that is a good, about a foot tall model of the station. So, essentially those light rail trains are front end, back end, and 3 modules in between. I believe that getting down to the 5-minute headways was involved about perhaps buying 5 more cars or 5 more of those trains, but those numbers are not at the very top and tip of my tongue. So if you want to send me that question by email, I will get those exact details to you, because I'm rather excited to double check that, because the purchase of new ones is very much of interest to me. I don't know if they actually announced how many new ones we'd be buying. And they did not announce what the new level of headways would be, but it's any progress towards that. Okay, Ross Cabon with free travel for all trips. If it's 5 station area, free travel for students. So if you're a University of Maryland student, your ID, would kind of count for traversing that area. And otherwise, I think a frequent and popular question about, how do you actually pay for a Purple Line in terms of, you get on board. And it will be interoperable with Maryland. Sorry, not Maryland. It will be interoperable with WMATA. The exact payment system is not necessarily a smart card, because as you all know, we've been starting to transition to different mechanisms for payment. Now you can use Google Pay. How things will change in the coming years, I think, is still exactly to be determined. But the core idea will be that you can use whatever your payment is for WMATA also on the Purple Line. And so I think the question of how the University of Maryland passes will work, is an open one, but I think that that's been something that they've been able to do some with DC schools, and with I can several permanently work out a similar solution there. 2026 cannot get her soon enough. I 100% agree. I am rather excited. I got my house in Long Branch, in part because I am a 7-minute walk from my Purple Line station. Right now I'm biking to Silver Spring every day. I'll still be doing a fair amount of biking, but I will sometimes take the bus. And I do appreciate the ability to put the bike on the bus, but it'll be much easier to put my bike on the Purple Line. And anyone who has ever driven Wayne Avenue along the Purple Line route knows that, particularly as I get a little older, I am not going to want to do my bike every single day. So I am, right there with your 7-year-old and quite excited. Okay, do we have any more questions from chat? All right, seeing none, I'll say again, my email, gregory.sanders@gmail.com, is in discussion. Feel free to contact me. And I will do my best to forward some of these, or go to our executive director, or actually, Christine, do you want to put in the Purple Line Now address? And that is one where you might even get a faster answer. And thank you for the opportunity to talk, and I appreciate, we only got this far, we only survived this point, thanks to the efforts of many of the people in this room. And some of you were here from the start, some of you joined along the way, and I'm greatly appreciative of all of you because this really has been a multi-generational project, from my father's efforts to my own. And it makes it a little more exciting to hear about our 7-year-old future writers, but are also quite hyped to be, part of this and, to get full enjoyment and use of the Purple Line throughout their lifetimes, because ultimately this is our future. So thank you all. And I will hand over my role again.
You're muted, Paul.
Paul, you're muted.
Yep, Paul, you gotta unmute. And somebody had asked about the recording. I'm just popping that information again into the chat. We'll be posting it to the ACT YouTube channel as soon as the file is available. So in the next day or so, and just you can go to the link now and subscribe to the channel and then get an alert when the file is loaded.
And now that I'm unmuted, I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank Greg for his presentation. You can see that the amount of interest in the Purple Line is immense, and there's a lot of, the Purple Line is in the spotlight, and all the new developments get closely examined, and so we really appreciate the opportunity for an update and to see where things stand, and we all hope for continued positive news on progress as the months and years go forward. And with that, I will call this meeting to a close and thank everyone for attending. People who have not yet joined ACT and wish to, we encourage your membership. We look forward to continued support, and we have a full list of activities and initiatives coming up for 2022. And with that, I'll say good night to you all.